Welcome to the world of probiotic foods. This is Cultured Food Life with your host, Donna Schwenk.
Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. And I'm always thankful that you tune in to listen every week on Tuesday. And today we have special guests. We have Kristen and Christopher Shockey, and they are authors of 3 different books, Fermented Vegetables, and then they have another cultured book called Fiery Ferments. And they have a new one coming out, which is what we're going to be talking a lot about today, that is called Miso, Tempeh, Natto, and Other Tasty Ferments. And they're a really unique couple, and I love their writing. I love their ferments. I love what they're doing. And they got started in fermenting foods in their farmstead food company, where they created over 40 varieties of cultured vegetables and krauts. And their current focus is on teaching the art of fermenting vegetables to others through classes and workshops on their farm. They live on a 40-acre hillside homestead in Applegate Valley of Southern Oregon. Welcome, Kristen and Christopher. I'm excited that you're here.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
So can you give me a little bit more of your background on how you got started into fermented foods?
We moved here 20 years ago. That's a big number, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just our passion for food. We wanted our kids to know where their food came from. So we started that whole homesteading thing with a big garden and orchards and dairy animals. And, as we were exploring cheese making and cider making and all those ways to preserve this food that's coming quickly on a homestead, more than you can eat at one time.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of canning and all of that. And at one point, my mom, who was a herbalist and acupuncturist, gave us a crock of sauerkraut, and it was actually already fermenting, and it was under the tree for Christmas.
Oh, wow.
And that sort of started us down this journey of how the preservation of vegetables, especially, the low acid vegetables, is just a powerhouse compared to sticking it in a can and making it mushy and not taste good. And
Right.
So from there, we really wanted a business together. So we started a small fermentation company, and standing at the market, we really learned, it was 8-10 years ago, how as ferments were coming into people's consciousness slowly, people really wanted to understand what was going on, how it worked. We've come so far away from that being normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what ended up starting the teaching. We were doing more and more teaching and realizing that was where the passion was really, moving
Helping
this
people
beyond
understand.
just a little market stand. Exactly. And
that's awesome. I know I started about 17, almost 18 years ago, and I was like the only one doing it, and so I would people thought I was crazy fermenting foods on my counter. My husband called them science projects, and but when you eat something and it has a dramatic effect on you and it changes your life, you pay attention. And I did, because it really had a profound effect on me and my children and my husband, actually, much to his surprise, because he really kind of was leery of it all. But fast forward, almost 2 decades later, and it's made all the difference in my life. It changed everything in my life. It didn't just change how I felt. It changed because it gave me energy, because I felt better. I had this sense of well-being I had never had. So hidden behind the sickness and disease that I experienced most in my life prior to finding these foods, because I was looking for something to help myself and my little infant daughter. When I did find it, it unearthed things in me that I didn't know were there. I didn't know that I liked writing. I didn't know that I wanted to do any of these things because I was too sick to care. But once I started to feel better, all these hidden treasures that lay within me started to surface. And all of a sudden, I had the energy and the desire and the passion to help other people learn about it because it had made me well. And I think that's really true with most health and wellness people. They find something that really changes their life and they want to share it. And I really think that that is what makes it such a wonderful thing for us, because we all have special gifts. We all have special things that we bring to this world. And when we use those gifts, it really does change not only our lives, but everybody around us. So I was thrilled reading your book. There were so many wonderful, there was just, it's a fantastic book. It's a big book, but it had so many nuggets in it. And I've already highlighted a bunch of things that I wanted to talk about. And one of the things on page 4 of the book, it's right in the beginning. One of the things I love that you talk about is about culture. And it says, what foods do you crave? And why do you crave them and not something else? And think about it. From your first bites of solid food through your rebellious toddler fights food and on to grade school, it's a journey that starts pretty much out of our control. And leading science now suggests that our cravings come not from our heads, but from our guts, more so specifically from the microbes that live in our guts. And it turns out these bacteria have their own cravings and use our 100 million nerve cells between our digestive tract and our brain to place their order, all the while we are their hosts and they're making the decisions. I love that. You want to talk more about that?
Sure. Well, I think this is Christopher. I think it came from the observation when we were at the farmer's market, and we had a beautiful little stand, but I think people thought we were selling maybe preserves or something sweet. And so they come in with the colors, and then there's that range of about 3 or 4 feet when they're really focusing in and realizing that's not something sweet. I think that's sauerkraut. And as they're kind of trying to figure out how they're going to negotiate socially, either backing out of that situation, their kids will have picked up the little samples and are just wolfing down the ferments, even if they weren't tall enough to see them. And then the parents oftentimes would say, "Oh, stop! You're not going to like that. That's sauerkraut or that's fermented stuff." And as we're watching the kids, just wolfing it down, and we thought, we've got to change this because people's perceptions maybe their only perception is grade school canned sauerkraut. And, so that was part of changing the adults, but really focusing on the kids who haven't had a bad experience yet. They just were being told that. And that led us into teaching children. Kristen and I teach, we do library programs and we teach little kids. We teach at fermentation festivals. We'll teach 50, 60 kids at a time how to make sauerkraut. And they love working with food, with their hands, getting to touch the food, talking about microbes, pH, and all of that. But then for the adults, we did a lot of research for this book, really understanding cravings and the relationship between the mind and the gut, because at the farmer's market, the beginning of the year, people would come and say, "Is this the probiotic stuff? My doctor told me I had to eat it." And we'd say, "Well, yeah, but it also tastes great." And by the end of the season, you could see them coming running across the market, and they're sharing way too much about how their guts have changed, and the positive feelings they're having.
Right.
And they're addicted. People were buying 2 or 3 jars at a time. And so something changed in, the period of that summer in terms of the cravings and what they really were wanting to eat and what was giving them energy. And so that led us to really look at the science behind it to say, what's going on here? How come people are changing with these foods? And so the lucky thing is from that period, 10 years ago at the market to today, science is really catching up about what's going on in our guts. And so there's a lot of great research out there now about what's really happening.
Yeah, it's really exciting how much has changed with that. Now they've even got ways to test your microbiome to see which foods you do better with, how your blood sugar responds, how your microbes respond, and it really helps you design something that we've never before had access to. And
and we've done some of that testing, and I feel like that's the place, medicine should start when you're feeling awful. Is just start there, like see what's going on.
Did you have your Did you have yours tested to see which foods you do better
Uh-huh.
with, or how did that work? Can you?
Well, we did a blood test
Mm-hmm.
and a stool test, sort of based on the microbiome at the same time, and it really gave us this complete picture of from the blood angle what was causing a reaction.
Were you
And
surprised?
then
Were you
we
surprised?
were. I think Christopher had something like rice on his, which is something he loves, and never knew there was a reaction happening.
Wow.
And then the microbiome piece, kind of gave us a real clear picture of who's there and what microbes we maybe were missing or needed more of or were great. And between the two, I think we kind of stuck to that whole thing that we put together from that for about 6 months, and it was a game changer.
Wow, that's
I
incredible.
just felt so much better. And the cool thing that happened is coming out of it, doing those tests again, I was gluten intolerant, but I wasn't anymore. And Christopher seemed to do fine on rice.
Oh,
And we just kind of know which things not to overdo it. Like, we don't have rice every day.
so now you can have it, but before you couldn't. Is that what you're saying? So you've been out because
Well,
there's a lot.
we didn't know he couldn't have it
Okay.
until we kind of went through the blood test, but then he was feeling better, and so
Right.
it's just sort of fascinating. Just off of what you said, like the tools that medicine has now.
Right.
Is fascinating.
Well, there's so much research now that they've discovered, and I see this every day in the work that I do because I get so many emails and so many letters, and I saw it with my daughter first of all. But many years ago, my 16-year-old daughter had all these food allergies, which was one of the reasons I found cultured foods. And I started giving her cultured food at every meal. And fast forward, 14, 15 years later, what happened was research came out and found that through overuse of antibiotics or through just killing certain microbes, she was missing a large strain of good bacteria in her gut that causes food allergies. And there's research all over the world for this. There's ones in Australia. I have it on my website too. They have in the US, they have in the UK. And what they've discovered is that when you replace that good bacteria, put it back into the gut, the food allergies go away. And because it happened to her. And I was seeing this across the board when people added these foods to their diet, their food allergies were going away. And I didn't know why. And it took, 15 years for the research to catch up, but it was because we were replacing the bacteria that was missing that was actually causing the food allergies to flare up in the first place. And then the food allergies went away. So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting thing now there's something I really want to talk to you about that's in your book. And I love the fermented food natto, which is fermented soybeans. And there's so many health benefits to it. And it has a very unique bacteria in it that makes it unique. And I would love for you to talk about that because I find it fascinating. And then I saw in your book how you called this particular bacteria a badass because it was like the one that stood out from all the other ones. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I'll take the badass part, bacillus, and then Kirsten should talk about loving natto because she really loves natto even more than I do. So she's slowly changing my gut microbiome out from under me, and I'm craving it more than ever. But she's having to do that. So yeah. So bacillus is Bacillus subtilis is different than what we are used to with the lactobacillus family. It's a really amazing bacterium, and it's super strong. They found some. I think we found research where they found them in the little tiny bellies of bees that were caught up for like 40 million years ago in amber. And the bacillus is still, those spores can still be activated. They can live in space with no oxygen. They're everywhere. They're in us. They're across the globe. So they're very ubiquitous bacterium. and they do something very different. So when they work for us, when they're working for us with the food, so natto's like a perfect case for using bacillus, because instead of lowering the pH, they're going to take it the other way and raise the pH, and it does some amazing things, especially to soybeans, but other legumes and grains, and you can probably talk about flavor.
Well, just one more thing about the bacteria. So Bacillus subtilis is also, one of our main food spoilers. So that's one of the things that, in certain applications, you really don't want it moving in. It will, spoil your food and take over. But in the case of natto, it's great. It is one of the members of our microbial community in our gut, and so it's nice to have that on board. The other thing Christopher mentioned, it's an alkaline ferment instead of a acid ferment, which is what most people are now used to, is the whole acidification. And the other thing that's interesting is it's a bacteria that sporulates, and so unlike lactobacillus or some of these ferments that you lose a certain amount just by heading through your digestive tract, right? You lose the viability. Bacillus subtilis has spores too, and so those will make it all the way into your gut and help to repopulate. So it has a little bit of a superpower there. That's part of that badass part. As far as flavor, neither one of us went into natto loving it. We had to, because it's a challenge for the American palate, especially because it's got some viscosity. The alkaline ferment gives it a little bit of it can have a little bit of an ammonia smell to it because you're on the other way on that pH scale. But if you start to it has a lot of umami, and especially folks that are, trying to stay away from dairy products, it can kind of be in that same place as a brie that's been aged. It's got that same kind of
strong flavor.
A
little bit of strong. I love it with mustard. I know that sounds crazy, but that is my favorite way to have it. Is I put mustard on it, so it kind of blends out those flavors. Have you ever tried it with that? It is so good with some of the.
It's good with mustard. We also like it with a little bit of mayonnaise. It also good. Kind of. The other thing that we did in this book is we're aware, like for an American, a stringy, cheesy pizza with mozzarella goo dripping off of it is like, wow. But we look at those same strings in natto and go, ee. Whereas, in Asia, they're going to look at those natto strings and go, yum, and look at our cheese and go, ee. So that's kind of back to what we grew up with, right? So what we did with natto is once, like Christopher said, once those bacteria move in and once you start getting used to it, you actually do start
to crave
it. And so we've got some recipes in the book that put it in like energy bars or coconut balls where you're getting the natto, but you really don't know it's there. It's part of, this whole other thing. And as your body gets used to it, suddenly one day, you're like, oh, wow, I think I'm going to try it a little less hidden. I'm going to put it in a salad dressing, or I'm going to put it in, some hummus. Again, foods that we're used to. And then at some point it's like, oh, just give it to me straight.
I have like an aioli sauce that I make that, I make this kombucha mayo is basically what I make. And then I put garlic and lemon juice in it and a little bit of salt and pepper, and it's really good on natto. I really, really like it. Tastes fantastic. It has a little bit of garlic chopped up in it, but it really tastes really well. Works really well to blend with the two flavors. But one of the main reasons I ate natto, to be honest, was the health benefits.
For sure.
I mean, they're huge. And that's the main reason I started eating it, and I really started to like it. And can you explain a little bit of some of those? Because there's some really big health benefits.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it is. It's
puts
huge.
blueberries to shame on superfoods.
Yeah, it does.
So you've got, first off, you've got fiber, right? Those beans have fiber in them, and it's coming up more and more that Americans aren't even eating enough fiber, and so you've got that. You've got the Bacillus subtilis, so you've got that probiotic portion, but the big superpower really is in that natto kinase, and the natto kinase has is it fibrogen that it breaks up, Christopher?
Yeah, fibrin.
Fibrin in the blood, and what it does is it kind of goes in there, and you can kind of think of it as little scrubbers going through your circulatory system, and so it helps with varicose type situations, but also great preventative for stroke, helps bring blood pressure down. I mean, things that are a big deal.
Yeah, they're huge.
Culture especially, and so.
And there's a lot of research to support that too, because I did a lot of research on it. It was one of the reasons I ate it, because I really felt like it would be a good addition to my diet. Since so many people in my family struggle with that blood pressure and things like that, and I love to use food as medicine. I found so many ways to use it, and I really was impressed with it has vitamin K. It has so many things in it that are so essential to us, but we don't realize what a difference even just adding it once or twice a week can make a really big difference in helping, even like your blood running smoother through your veins, and the clotting and all of those things that generally we take for granted. It's a really good addition to anybody's diet.
Yeah, and some of the research I did also, that stringiness actually is can add to sort of some lubrication in our system too. So it's from every angle. It's pretty incredible.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Christopher.
Well, it's also a complete protein. So on the nutrition side, it's got all of our essential amino acids that we need, which is pretty important, especially, if you've got a challenged diet and you're trying to build your body back, getting all the amino acids is important. Very important.
And I want to talk too about, you've got miso in here, which I absolutely love and eat all the time. I loved your recipes in here. And can you give us a little background on miso? I found that fascinating, some of the things that you wrote on, where it came from and how it was developed. And I thought you could share that with them.
Yeah, miso is old.
Very.
Or at least very, at least the it's come down through a lot of different paths or cultures, but somewhere along the way in China, fermenting beans by starting out with koji, which is Aspergillus oryzae. It's a fungus, and so miso's, I call it kind of a top shelf ferment because it's got two distinct fermentations in it, and really all the microbes, in the end product are involved. So anyway, historically, at some point or another, they figured out that growing koji on either beans or on rice gives you a complete set of enzymes, and you can kind of think of them as little scissors snipping them up, and when the enzymes start to work on these foods. And so, for example, with rice or grains or beans, until you get those enzymes to work them up, there's so much of it that's undigestible. But it simplifies it, so your fats become fatty acids, your sugar, carbohydrates become simple sugars, and your protein becomes amino acids. And when that happens, you get so much more flavor and you get so much more availability of the nutrients. And, somehow or another, they figured that out, that you could take these really inexpensive food, beans and soybeans, and they're not even healthy for you when they're not fermented.
Agreed.
And turn them around.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it, moved through different countries, in Korea, it became doenjang. And in Japan, they really took it to a new level where it became miso. And, and still in China, there are many variations of these bean pastes.
Yeah, I really, that's something you hit upon that I want to talk about. I did struggle when I had soy that wasn't fermented. That was something, it did affect my thyroid actually for a little while. But as soon as I took it out and had fermented soy, it all went back to normal. But it's important to, I think, ferment your soybeans, at least it was for me. I really think that that's the best way to eat them because they do have all kinds of phytoestrogens and things in them that can mess with you if you're not careful and if you don't know how to eat them and consume them. And I've never had a problem with any of the soybeans when they were fermented. And of course, you can make miso from many different types of beans. And I think you've got quite a few in this book, don't you? That are there. You can make it many different ways. I think barley and I saw, was it chickpeas is in here too, and different ways to make miso.
Oh, for sure. So yeah, with miso, I mean, I started talking about it a little bit, but if we get just to the more practical side, you're basically harvesting the enzymes that happen from growing this fungus on whatever. You can grow it on the beans directly, or you can grow it on a grain, and it can be any grain. It can be rice, it can be barley, it can be quinoa, it can be popcorn, it can be, whatever substrate, because you're putting this mold on there, and they lay down a set of enzymes and they just go to work. And then before they move to their next cycle, which is to sporulate, you harvest it basically by stopping that fermentation, and then you mix that with your beans, and It can be pinto beans, it can be black beans. There's some wonderful misos made with lima beans, or what we had a lot of fun with is looking at the only North American bean, which is a Tempeh bean, and it's the only bean that is from this part of the world originally. And then what happens is those beans are broken down by those enzymes through time, and they're just given so much flavor and nutrition by how that fermentation breaks it down. So once you mix it with the koji and some salt and your bean, let's say you're using a pinto bean, the other thing that happens is lactobacillus is moving in, so you're getting some of that. A little tiny bit of subtilis is actually moving in as well. You're getting yeasts, and so that's back to that whole top shelf ferment idea, is that everybody is in there breaking these foods down, and especially when it comes to soy. I mean, that's what makes it so incredible, because you're kind of breaking down all those parts that we can't digest or that are really bad for us into something that is really good for us.
Well, I love all the different recipes you have in here for it too, because I use miso on everything from salad dressings to I use it in sauces. I'm constantly, I do soups. I do all kinds of things with miso because I love the versatility of it. I've even mixed it. Okay, I have a recipe in my book that I think I mixed it with a nut butter. It was delicious. I've done that one. I love that one. That's one of my favorites. And anyway, I love the versatility of it. I love that it lasts forever in my fridge practically. And I love
it's the umami. it's an umami powerhouse. So it's like
Yeah.
when you do that, when you mix it with your nut butter or whatever, you're it's your secret sauce.
It
And
is.
then when people are like, "Ooh, that's really good. What is that?"
Right.
You can either tell them or you can just be like, I'm amazing.
I know. I've got so many different things that I put it into, and I've kind of done that through the years just because I've made so many different types of ferments. I had to like sneak stuff into things so my family didn't know because they were always, in the beginning they didn't know what I was doing. So I would like put it in. I would sneak stuff into their ketchups. I would put it in their mustards, and then I started making my own ketchups and mustards, and then I started putting in their salad dressing, and it was a great way to give them probiotics. And honestly, when you house a lot of good bacteria and good yeast too. We're afraid, you mentioned funguses in it, and people freak out when you say that. But honestly, we live in harmony with these microbes, be it fungus or yeast or bacteria, and they are some incredible resources for us that, for years, the only thing you ever heard about with bacteria was that you heard about antibiotics and you heard about antibacterial soaps. Everybody wanted to kill it. And they didn't know that 99% of the bacteria in their body was keeping them well every day. It was even
Right.
allowing them to breathe. And it has so many functions. And it's the same with, yeast. And there's good yeast and there's yeast that can take over. And we need that balance in our body. We need all of it because we all work in this harmony together. All of them fight, though. A lot of people say it's a symbiotic relationship, but honestly, bacteria and yeast fight to take over a little bit, and they keep each other in balance. So I kind of like that they, that there's an entire universe going on in our bodies and in our guts, keeping us well, and there's 100 trillion of them down there, so they're doing something, and it is exciting to me that in my life, my food has become my medicine. And I see it's such a natural way of living for me that sometimes I get shaken out of my reality. My husband went to see some of his extended family last weekend, and they were all at the table and they were all getting out their pills and sharing their pills with each other. And they looked over at Ron, and Ron had none. And he's like 58 years old, and he's the healthiest one in the room. And he didn't realize that the lifestyle that we lead has led to such a different way of living and viewing everything that he almost felt like a foreigner. And you know what I'm saying? Because it was so starkly different from how they were living that he had forgotten that what we're doing isn't really the norm. And it's made all the difference in our lives. I mean, we have energy, we do a lot of stuff. And I think it helps your well-being. I think it helps your moods. I think it gives you a feeling of joy. When you're happy and you feel healthy, I mean, when you're sick, you're in trouble. So you don't realize how much that affects your life. And I look at these foods, and even miso, when people are first starting out, sometimes I recommend, starting out with some of these things that are easier for them because they're kind of freaked out by all the cultured foods that I make. And anybody can have some miso soup or some of my nut butter mixed in with miso. Do you know what I'm saying? And it was a great way to just ease it into the family. And your
Well,
book has great recipes for that.
thank you. And it's also actually easy to make. I mean, it sounds complicated, when I'm talking about making koji and growing all that first. But here's the beauty is you can buy, either online or in Asian markets, you can buy koji that has been, or koji rice. So the rice is
Right.
already on there. And so actually, like we have a little pre-order campaign on our website, and we show people that, and the book does too, but you can make your own miso with chickpeas or whatever bean you like. Just go to the Asian market or get it online, some koji, and then it's a matter of literally soaking some beans, cooking some beans, adding some koji and some salt, and stuffing that all in a jar. And, a month or two later, you can have this amazing homemade miso. And so even this ferment, if you don't get yourself bogged down on what is going on and just do it, it does its job. Those microbes work together and they make it happen. And so miso is actually, even though it's such a high level ferment, it's actually a super approachable ferment.
Yeah, and we're probably going to have to wrap up here soon, but I do want to talk about Tempeh, which is you say it's different from other soybean ferments. And you talk about the enzymes in it, and I would love for you to tell me why you think that it's different.
I mostly think of it as different, partially because you're using it, so differently. I mean, natto. The reality is, it's not something you're going to eat a bowl of. You might have natto toast, or you might, have natto on the side of something, or you're going to have a few tablespoons. Miso, definitely, beyond miso soup, where that's the main player, you really, like you said, you're going to put in your nut butter, you're going to put in your salad dressing, you're going to marinate foods with it, you can pickle foods with it. But tempeh really can take center stage, and it's such a high quality, inexpensive protein, to be a full meal. Instead of having a hamburger, you can have a tempeh burger or tempeh tacos, or, you can really use it in ways that we're used to eating. And I'm not saying whether it's because you're trying to be a vegetarian or not be a vegetarian. It's just such a high quality food, and you're going to get the benefits of the fiber and all the, all the qualities of fermenting these beans through a main part of your meal, and again, like miso, it's game on for any bean that you love. You really can make it. Traditionally, it's made with soy, but you can make it with, whatever. Your black beans are beautiful. You can make it with chickpeas. You can make it with, split peas, black-eyed peas. It really doesn't matter, and it just enhances the benefits of that meat.
You even have a hazelnut cocoa tempeh in here, which I thought was really interesting. What does that taste like? I want to know what that tastes like. That you got coconut and hazelnuts and cocoa nibs, and that just sounds. It's made with chickpeas. It sounds really fascinating to me. So
yeah, it's fun. It's and you can kind of go either way with it. I tend to, still think of it as a little
savory
more savory, but you get that. I mean, hazelnut just has that unique sort of sweet nuttiness, and so that comes through. The nib gives it a little bit of a, that chocolatey bitter, and the hazelnut. The chickpeas in this case kind of, take backseat to it, and so you get this really nice flavor, and it's just fun. I mean, it's fun to see what you can do with asking these microbes to process these foods for you and give you some pretty incredible new flavors that,
I like what you say in this one part about, excuse me, I didn't know. Were you finished? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was, yeah.
Okay. I really loved what you said. You were talking about tempeh in your book, and you said that there's nothing, they're talking about the enzymes that are in it, and it said there's nothing magical foreign about these enzymes. We have them within us, and we eat them as the pancreas secretes these enzymes into our intestines, and then each enzyme goes into working and processing the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins. But if the enzymes aren't sufficient enough, then they no longer can absorb nutrients from the body, and that's when we get into trouble. And this is loaded with, all of these foods are loaded with enzymes, but I love how, we take that for granted. We take for granted that our body's just going to break down these foods and get what it needs from it. But without the enzymes that are sufficient enough, we can't do that. So I think that, some of these foods, although many people aren't as familiar with them, I think that it's coming into the forefront. I think that, and the more we talk about it, the more that will happen. The more you do it, the more people around you become interested in it too. And that's what I love about this book. I'm excited about it because there's not a lot on them, out there that puts it in such a great way, with recipes, and gives you the history, gives you the health benefits. You've done just a fantastic job. So we're going to need to wrap up, but I want everybody to know where they can get your book. And can you give us some more information about that?
Sure. anywhere that you love to buy books, if that's your little corner bookstore or, online. It's definitely out there. If you want the signed copy, you can head to our website, which is ferment.works, and we can send you one. And also we do on our website have a little free e-course that right now does not include any of these ferments, but it is another way to kind of delve a little bit more into vegetable ferments. But that'll get you on our mailing list too if you want to be on that.
Well, thank you guys for coming. I so appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your book with me and for putting it out there for so many people. I hope it helps a lot of people. I hope they have fun making these foods and think about it in a whole different way. Did a great job. Really appreciate it. So thanks for coming.
You.
Thanks for being a part of my podcast. And I appreciate everybody for listening. And I hope that if you'll tune in next Tuesday or hit the subscribe button and you'll get it in your e-box or in your mailbox. And thanks you guys for joining us again this week. And I hope you have a great week. I always appreciate you listening and tuning in. Have a good one, guys.